Yesterday, the brand new MacBook Air M2 arrived here, and I unboxed it, answered a bunch of your questions. You've got more questions, let's do more of those. Want the latest Apple news, leaks and rumours? Subscribe and ring the bell. And just so you know guys, if you want to ask a question about this or anything else Apple related, use hashtag #ICaveAnswers down in the comments and we'll get it answered on the show for you. First question comes from Saad Ismail, the artist formerly known as Apple Tomorrow, and he asks, what is the audio difference like between the M1 and the M2 MacBook Airs? So I thought we would test this out because my wife has the M1, I have the M2, and we did a little test. Obviously we used the crab dance because that's the only way you can test speakers. And I'm not 100% certain how this will come through on your speakers. However, to me, it sounds like there is a little bit more volume in the M1, but it's more in the high end. It's more in the kind of mids and highs, whereas the MacBook Air M2 seems to be a little bit more balanced. There is a little bit more punch to the bass, and obviously the big difference here is that the speakers are located differently on the device as well. So with the M1 MacBook Air, you've got speaker grills down either side of the keyboard. Those are completely gone on the MacBook Air M2, and I thought this might mean that it was keyboard firing, which is what the old 11-inch MacBook Air used to do. However, it's actually firing out through the back by the hinge, where you would normally have your vents, and bouncing off the display so that everything is kind of pointing back towards you, and it sounds like the audio is coming from the display. I think it's a nicer sound, but yes, the M1 Air probably just peaks it on volume. Next question, Bibasic7 asks, do you think that the midnight colour will show scratches easily? My 2015 MacBook Pro has some scratches and some paint chipped off around the MagSafe port, and I can't see it unless I look closely because the silver colour is very close to the bare aluminium. My dark grey 7th gen iPod Classic, on the other hand, shows scratches very easily because of the colour difference. And also, Joe asked, ICaveAnswers, how durable do you think that matte black coating is going to be on this? And a bunch of the rest of you guys have been asking on Twitter and when we've had live chats going. So this is obviously a big question for people. So I think there's going to be issues. I'll be honest with you. I think the midnight, it's like a blue, it's a very dark blue, it's not a black, but I understand why people are calling it black, and it's also not a paint or a coating. This is anodized aluminium. So the process, as I understand it, is you dip the aluminium into a bath with dyes in it, and then you electrolyze that as a coating over the top. So basically, if you have raw aluminium, it will kind of self-anodize a little bit, and basically kind of corrode almost on the surface, oxidize on the surface, and that's what kind of protects the aluminium underneath. In this situation, you're basically dropping it into a dye bath and then anodizing it in there, so you run a current through it, which basically coats the outer edge because the aluminium itself is slightly porous. So what will happen with this is, because the aluminium underneath is going to be silver, you are going to see, especially around any sharp edges, and as I've commented before, the front edge of the MacBook Air, the corners around the latch area are a little bit sharp. I've got a feeling that is where you're going to see it first, and also around the ports. I do think there is going to be some chipping on this, but you're not chipping off like a paint coat. It is part of the aluminium. It's part of the actual finish, but it is it's going to show. It's going to show. Just for reference, here is a paintball marker from a team called Dynasty. All paintball markers pretty much are aluminium bodies, and then they anodize them for the colours, and you can see where this is picked up a lot of wear on the raised surfaces. Now, I don't think it's going to look terrible. I think it's one of these things where you're actually going to get some wear, especially along the palm rest edge as well, with these more bold, darker colours, unless Apple has done some absolute magic with it. But based on the pictures that I've already seen on Twitter, some people have already got some silver showing through around their port areas. So I think that is going to be an issue. Joe asks, IK answers, M1 Mac Mini or M2 MacBook Air. Now, that's a really interesting question because obviously that's what I've got here. That's what I use on a daily basis, is the M1 Mini. And as I said in a previous show, the plan is that the M1 Mini will stay around and that will become kind of an office file server kind of system. And then this display will be available for the M1 MacBook Air when I come in to use it, because the plan would be for the M1 MacBook Air to become like my primary device. However, I actually have a different theory for what might actually happen now, which is that the M1 has got the limitation, of course, of only having one external display. But here's the thing, universal control kind of makes that a non-issue if you've got more than one Mac. And where I've got the M1 Mini here, which is perfectly capable of running these extra displays, you can basically use them all as one computer. It's just that you've got different computers behind the scenes that are running those individual displays. So I could walk in here, keep my two displays here that are attached to the Mac Mini, and I can just open my laptop and move over onto the displays and use those displays as if it's part of the same computer, basically. I can drag files between them, and if I want to render something, I could have the Mac Mini actually dealing with that on this display, while my MacBook Air is still more than happily chugging away in the background doing whatever I want to do on the day. So this actually is a really good way of doing almost distributed computing, but all controlled from a single device, and you can do as many displays as you want by that token, I guess, because this was a cheap display just attached to a Mac Mini, and I can universal control into it. That's a pretty nice little touch. In terms of which one would I use, I didn't realise how much better the displays are on the on Apple's own displays. So actually using the MacBook Air, I was just absolutely blown away by the picture quality yesterday, even just watching YouTube in the kitchen while I was preparing dinner. So I think the Air sneaks it. Rabbi OniichanStein, I hope I've got your name right, my friend, asks, do the 512 gigabyte SSDs have the same issue on the M2 MacBook Pro? There is no issue with the 512 gig sizes. It's the 256 on the smaller size that at the moment it looks like they're using a single NAND chip for those, as opposed to a pair of 256 gig NAND chips for the 512s and up. And there have been mentions that this might be a cost-saving measure. I don't think that's the plan. I think it's purely minimising the amount of parts that they've got moving around, and maybe they had some supply issues with getting the smaller chips. Either way, it might even be that Apple could only get so many and they were allocated already to iPhones. There's possibilities there. But no, there's no issues with the 512 gig models. They have got the full speed on the NAND flash, no dramas at all. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up there for this particular show. If you've got any questions about the M2 MacBook Air or anything else Apple related, leave them down in the comments section, #IKAnswers, and I will happily answer them for you. And if you haven't subscribed already, hit the subscribe button, like the video, and make me a happy man. Thanks to all the Patreons. We'll see you in the next one. Want the latest Apple news, leaks, and rumours? Subscribe and ring the bell.